Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm really glad you're here today because we're diving into a topic that's creating huge waves across the country. President Trump's new detention and deportation policy and the massive legal clash unfolding around it. Whether you follow politics closely or you're just trying to stay informed, this is one of those stories that affects real people, real communities, and potentially the future of immigration law in the US. So, let's get into it together. Over the past few months, the Trump administration has rolled out one of its toughest immigration enforcement strategies yet, a policy that pushes for large-scale detentions and rapid deportations. And according to recent reporting, including new details from Politico, this policy doesn't just target recent border crossers. It reaches deep into communities, workplaces, and even longtime residents, treating many of them under a new interpretation of immigration law that makes detention almost automatic. Now here's where things get intense. Under this approach, many people living in the US, even those who've been here for years, are being categorized as applicants for admission. That might sound technical, but the impact is huge. It means they can be detained without access to bond hearings, something immigrant rights groups argue is a major break from long-standing legal norms. And with this policy in place, detention numbers have skyrocketed to levels the country hasn't seen before. What I find really interesting and honestly a little startling is how quickly the system has expanded to support this massive detention network. We're talking about private facilities, local jails, temporary structures, and all kinds of holding sites being pulled into this national effort. It raises a major question. How far should a government go when enforcing immigration law? And just as important, what does due process look like under policies like this? As all this ramps up, something else is happening at the same time, a tidal wave of lawsuits. Across the country, dozens and dozens of federal judges, including some appointed by President Trump, have been weighing in. Many of them say this new interpretation of immigration law crosses constitutional lines. One recent ruling ordered the administration to provide bond hearings for detained migrants, calling the current approach unlawful. And another case just certified a nationwide class action suit that could shape the next phase of the legal fight. Let's pause for a second and think about that. When courts across ideological lines start pushing back on a policy as ambitious as this, what does that tell us? Should courts be stepping in, or are they overstepping? What role should the judiciary play when it comes to immigration enforcement? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. But beyond the legal drama, there's a human side here, one that's easy to overlook in the middle of all the political noise. Communities across the country are feeling the impact. Families are dealing with sudden detentions. Some individuals with no criminal record are finding themselves caught in this massive enforcement dragnet. Neighborhoods are anxious, and immigrant communities are preparing for the possibility of large-scale operations continuing well into next year. It makes you think, how do these policies shape the way communities function? What does it do to trust? To safety? To mental health? Even if someone isn't at risk of detention, the environment around them changes. And when millions of people feel that shift, it becomes more than a policy. It becomes a social reality. At the same time, President Trump and his team argue that this approach is necessary. They say the system needs to be tough, that the government has every right to enforce the law this way, and that the legal interpretation at the center of all these lawsuits is well within the administration's authority. So we're watching two very different interpretations of the law collide, and somewhere in the middle are the courts, trying to decide which direction the country should take. So where does this all lead? Well, with the number of lawsuits piling up and the courts continuing to weigh in, the battle could eventually land in front of the Supreme Court. And depending on how they rule, the outcome could either cement this strategy as a long-term tool of immigration enforcement or completely reset the way the US government is allowed to carry out detentions in the future. It's one of those moments where the legal system and the political world collide in a way that shapes real lives. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you another question, one that's worth thinking about no matter where you stand politically. What should immigration enforcement look like in a country with such a diverse population and such a complicated immigration system? Is the path forward about being stricter, more flexible, or something entirely different? Let me know what you think. I genuinely enjoy reading your perspectives, and your comments always bring extra depth to conversations like this. Thanks so much for spending a few minutes with me today. If you found this breakdown helpful, informative, or even just thought-provoking, please go ahead and like the video, share it with others, and of course subscribe for more content just like this. Your support really helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you clear, accessible explanations on the biggest issues happening right now. Take care, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.